This is the Ithaca M49. This one is actually the M49R, which is the repeater version. M49 is a single shot lever action. This one is actually a tube fed multi-shot. There's absolutely nothing on the internet about this. You can find instructions for the 49, but not for the 49R. And despite what people say about the takedown being basically the same, not even remotely close to true. Along with my other disclaimer, please keep in mind that with the Model 49 and the 49R, if you take pins out or put pins in the wrong direction or use the wrong type of force, the wrong tools, you can break the receiver, you can break the bolt, you can ream out the holes on the receiver. So I do not recommend doing anything with this unless you are absolutely 100% certain about what you're doing. Alright, what we'll start with is removing the wood. That's about the only similarity between the 49 and the 49R is that you start by removing the stock. To do that, remove the butt plate by first removing these two screws. This may vary slightly from gun to gun, but this one is two Phillips heads, and they're just self-tapping wood screws. Those out. Set all of those aside. Next step is to remove the stock. If you look down inside there, you'll see a screw. It's a flat, just a simple slotted screw, and also has a four-sided bolt. Let's put the screwdriver down in there, get a hold of that screwdriver head, and just turn that out. That will allow the whole stock to come off. The stock, inside that is the screwdriver, or correction, the bolt. And just to avoid losing any of that, especially the washers and what order the washers are placed on the bolt, I actually just leave the bolt and the washers inside the stock. Set the stock aside. Now the next step is to remove this. This actually unscrews. Alright, what I've done is put duct tape on it, get the lever up out of the way, grab it with your pliers or channel locks, and then just turn it. It's not going to turn that easy for you the first time you take it off. And when it comes out, your hammer spring is inside there. Also not going to come out that easy the first time you take it apart. And then inside here, you will most likely find a lock washer. That lock washer is not the easiest thing to get out. You just barely see it at the bottom of the hole there. If that lock washer falls out, be very careful not to lose it. What I recommend is taking it out on purpose just so you don't lose it. That peg that you're seeing at post is part of another piece that will come out later from the inside. If you find that it's locked in there and doesn't come out, like I'm dealing with here, I'll show you how to remove it later from the inside. This is about the point that the similarities between the two guns stop. Anything on the M49 tells you to pull the pins for the hammer and the trigger, and the pin for the lever. Well, on the M49, you pull the pin on this lever and it actually comes straight out from the bottom. The 49R, that's not the case. You have to disassemble the guts and remove this by lifting it out through the top. For the 49R, the repeater, you need to remove the block first. Just a basic flathead screwdriver. These are actually Loctited in place, so these are not going to come out this easy for you. When you put them back in, also Loctite them, because when you put them back in, you don't seat them all the way in. The other thing is, if you'll notice, the ones on the right side of the receiver have a very small nipple on them. The ones on the left side have a larger one. But once you have those out, open the lever and this whole thing will just lift up and back. That is your bolt. When that lifts out, if you have a 49 or have seen pictures or explosive views of a 49, this is completely different on the 49R as it is from the 49. These two pieces right here, however, which I'll get to later, are loose, and if you tip them over they will fall out. What you want to do now is remove the front wood. That's going to include the tube magazine, the foregrip, and the ring. This ring is held on with a Phillips head screw, just like the butt plate was. Unscrew that, and it'll slide off. Now what you'll see, what holds the foregrip on, is this plate that's on the tube, and then inside on the receiver, you can't see it, there's two pins that stick out into the wood. So in order to remove the foregrip, you actually have to pull the magazine. In order to pull that tube magazine, there's a drift pin here you have to pull out. Now this drift pin is just like the one on the receivers. There's a smooth side, and then there's a knurled side. You can see those machined areas, those little knurls, actually flare that pin and make this side of the pin bigger. So you'll need to drive it out from that side. To do that, you just use a regular drift punch of the appropriate size. That will push out the bottom. So pull the tube far enough forward that you can just remove the foregrip off of that tube. Set a tube or the foregrip, either one, and pull them forward like that. So pull the tube far enough forward that you can just remove the foregrip off of that tube. Now it gets a little bit tricky. I recommend taking the inner tube, the follower, out of the tube magazine. Do that, just turn it as if you're going to unlock it to load it, and then just pull the inner tube out. Now this part's tricky and it'll drive you nuts. But what you need to do now is remove this tube. You need to remove the tube by sliding it backwards until it comes out of this ring. As you'll see, it gets in the way at the bottom here, so it will just barely clear the side of the receiver with enough room to slide this down and out of that ring. So once you get it clear of the receiver on the bottom, just kind of start twisting it back and forth while you're pulling down on it. And what that will do is that will twist it to get it clear of that ring. Once you get it clear of that ring, the whole thing will come off. Next thing we'll get into is pulling the pins. There's a few pins on here to pull, a couple of them you don't have to pull, but if you look at the receiver on this, you will see that one side of the pin is nice and smooth, just like any drift pin, no big deal. However, on the other side of the gun, you'll see that those pins are knurled. They have flares machined into them. Now what those do is they make one side of the pin bigger than the other. If you drive these pins out the wrong direction, you will ruin the receiver. It'll actually remount the holes and make them too big. The side with the flares, or those machine pieces on them, is the large side. You need to drive the pins out that direction so that the large side never goes through the receiver of the gun.